Hi, everyone. I'm Robert Waggoner, and this is a worldofluciddreaming.com event. I've been a reader of the worldofluciddreaming.com website for a long time, and I've been a lucid dreamer for more than 40 years, if you can imagine that. So I've written two books on lucid dreaming, and I also co-edit a free online magazine called Lucid Dreaming Experience, which you can find at luciddreamingmagazine.com. So I'm happy to be with you here today. What I wanted to do first was just tell you a little bit about the last issue of the Lucid Dreaming Experience magazine. And what we'll find out is just the depth and beauty of lucid dreaming by just looking at the magazine briefly. And then here in about 10 minutes, I'll open it up for questions. So again, if you want to be on the video, just raise your hand and I'll call on you. And if you'd prefer not to be on the video, but have a question or an experience you want to share, just go to the chat and put it in the chat and we'll take it from there. So I'm going to just share the screen while I do this here for a second. And so here was the last issue cover of our magazine, Lucid Dreaming Experience. You know, my friend Lucy Gillis and I started as co-editors of this magazine basically 25 years ago. So it comes out quarterly, which basically means that we're close to issue number 100 that we've gone through. And if you want to see the past issues, you can just go to luciddreamingmagazine.com and click on past issues, and that's what you'll find. In every issue, I interview someone about their experience with lucid dreaming. And sometimes these are authors of books on lucid dreaming. Sometimes they're people with interesting websites. And sometimes they're just people that I've met at my own workshops and various events that I was at. And so in this last issue, which is December 2024, that you can see for free just by going to that website, I interview a woman who who lives in Spain, and her name is Mariana Quintero. And it was interesting interviewing her because what she talked about, she told me that um, she grew up in Colombia, in the country of Colombia, in the late 80s and 90s, during a time when the country was deeply affected by war, terror, and crime. And she writes, as children, we were constantly exposed to news of violence, bombings, kidnappings, and disappearances, which ultimately took root in my psyche, reappearing as disturbing dream scenes where I'd be harmed or trapped in chaotic situations like riots or guerrilla takeovers. So, in my late teens and early 20s, I also developed a major depressive disorder, and my dreams were filled with nightmares. At that time, I thought this was the norm, just the standard dream experience. But when my depression hit its peak around age 23 or 24, I started having recurring dreams of dying, often in disasters like tsunamis. These dreams felt so real and unsettling that I began keeping a dream journal. Although I haven't yet heard about lucid dreaming, something told me that recording these experiences was important. So she learned about this technique that Carlos Castaneda brought up in his book, Journey to Ixtlan, of finding your hands in the dream state and realizing you're dreaming. And so she began to practice that and eventually had this really powerful, uh, what she calls an out of body experience. Then she said that that experience was so fascinating that she decided to explore lucid dreaming more powerfully. And she said, um, I wanted to explore everything on my own terms, without gurus or teachers or outside influence, just writing down what I saw and pursuing my questions very privately. The intensity of my intent really fueled my success, but eventually the training began. I entered a phase of lucid dreams where I had to learn critical skills, gaining stability, letting go of projections fueled by my own expectations and fears, and learning how to move fluidly in that space. This journey has taken me around 7 years and over 1,000 experiences and helped me heal my nightmares, worked with my nervous system while lucid, and ultimately learning to stay as still and receptive as possible. And she goes on with some incredible stories about what lucid dreaming taught her. And so I'm just going to skip to the parts that had to do with nightmares. So I began exploring lucid techniques and I started using them to work through the tsunami nightmares. I tried countless strategies, using magic wands, calming the water with my hands, speaking to the sea, even changing the sky's color in lucid dreams. Each attempt brought some progress, and eventually I was able to transform the tsunami into a beautiful sunset. In the final version of this nightmare, the wave came at me, but I knew deeply there was nothing to fear. The wave dissolved into the sky, turning into beautiful pink clouds that formed a brilliant rainbow. It was breathtaking. Then she goes on. The second recurring nightmare involved a specific street in downtown Bogota where I would be assaulted in various traumatic ways, from muggings to knife attacks to sexual assault. I, I also experienced passing on the floor in some of them completely vulnerable. Unfortunately, this nightmare reflected real experiences growing up that I'd heard about or witnessed stories of violence and danger in the city. And later, I encountered these real threats while working downtown, being threatened by people with knives and stuff. This left a deep impression on me. So, working lucidly with these dreams over many years, I explored different approaches: running away, flying away, trying to negotiate with the attackers, inviting them to have coffee, and eventually imagining them as children who were in need of love. Last month, in what I felt like a major resolution, I found myself in this nightmare again, but this time my mom was with me. And I believe she's lucid in this dream. We encountered the attackers, only now they appeared as children who had experienced terrible hardships. With my mom's presence, the instinct to offer them motherly care emerged naturally. We calmly took their weapons from their small hands, sat with them, and embraced them. They softened in our arms, and we all wept, but with a deep tenderness. It was a profoundly healing experience that felt like it touched layers of hurt and fear beyond words. And so, what I'm trying to get at by just sharing this story that you can see in this particular magazine interview is that this woman saw that lucid dreaming was a process. It was an educational journey, first learning how to use lucid dreaming, how to stabilize it, how to deal with your own projections of your own fears and expectations, how to realize that your beliefs and emotions and ideas are helping to shape the reality that you then experience. But she kept going deeper and deeper and began to have these profound inner transformations. Again, some of these, she said that she spent 7 years working on these. But again, when you grow up in a country like she did in Colombia, where there's a lot of violence and killings and disappearances and things, you know, you take on a lot. You take on a lot of issues and a lot of concerns, and sometimes you have to really do some deep work to work through all of that. And so I think all of us have our own challenges, maybe not this severe, but we have our own challenges. The other beautiful thing that she mentions in this interview is that lucid dreaming helped her emerge out of her major depressive experience that she was having in her mid 20s. By the use of lucid dreaming, she began to get insights into the nature of her mind, the nature of her emotions, the nature of projecting fears, and she began to resolve them as she moved forward. She mentions in the interview that she had read my books and books by Charlie Morley and Robert Moss and others, And all of these were helpful in giving her ideas to play with in the lucid dream state. But the important thing, lucid dreaming is a journey. And again, I've been on this journey for more than 40 years. And it's truly profound how deep it is and what you learn as you go along. A lot of people get in 30 or 40 lucid dreams and think they have it all figured out. And we all got to start someplace. But again, the journey will actually show us more, teach us more, and help us discover the greater depth to lucid dreaming. So with that, I'll leave that there, and I'll just open it up for questions. So if you have questions, if you'll use one of the reaction buttons down there and put up your hand or something, that'd be great. Or if you go to the chat room, we can take it from there. So I see Bill has his hand up. So Bill, we're going to have you unmute. Yep, and go for it.
Yeah, thank you. Wonderful to be with you, Robert.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Let's see. That was a great story you just read from the woman who had been through all that. And it brought up something for me that I've been thinking about. I've read the books of Castaneda, working with Don Juan all those years. And there was one point, it might have been in The Art of Dreaming, where Dr. Castaneda came up against some obstacle, and he was told to do the recapitulation. And, what you read by that woman kind of seemed like that too, only she did it maybe in a different way, directly through the dreams. And I was curious if you have any experience with the recapitulation approach.
So if I recall the recapitulation approach, it was recalling a past memory or an interaction with somebody and doing a kind of breath work to let it go. Is that right?
Yes, you sweep the memory as you're turning your head and breathing in and out, and
Right.
you're leaving behind something that is unpleasant or regaining something that you lost.
Right.
And what's really interesting about that is Castaneda did it for years, and he was actually corrected after doing the whole thing, where Don Juan told him that what you really need to do is make certain that you take responsibility for each, your experience of each of those events.
Right. So,
Nonetheless,
yeah, Bill, I recall reading that in the Castaneda books. You know what? Here's one thing that I've noticed about lucid dreaming. I've worked with a number of people who ultimately became quite experienced at lucid dreaming, and some of them really surprised me because they shot out of the gate, like a cannon. They just like, oh, they were so deep into lucid dreaming. They're having these profound experiences. I remember one person in particular, and because it was like there was all this pressure, I asked him, were you one of these people who basically denied your spiritual self for decades? And he wrote me back and said, yeah, that was his case. That he grew up in a family where, spiritual stuff was kind of looked down upon, and it was complicated, and so he just always kind of denied it. And so as soon as he kind of opened up, then it just shot out. He's having these incredible lucid dream experiences. But what happened with this particular gentleman after about 3 or 4 years of just epic, cinematic, incredible lucid dreams, he encountered his childhood self who was still devastated by the divorce of his parents when he was 7 or 8 years old. And he was just blown away that was still within his psyche, that was beginning to emerge in his lucid dreams for him to consciously work on and basically repair. And so that's how powerful this all can be, because oftentimes um, a lot of people, there's a certain term for using spiritual practices just to paper over, all the psychological distress that one might have experienced during their life and that kind of thing. but in this case, the beautiful thing about lucid dreaming is oftentimes the conscious unconscious or the inner awareness will at the proper time take you towards the area that needs to be resolved. And he began to resolve it consciously. But you're right. The one thing I think about Castaneda's approach is this, and I think this is very accurate. Don Juan kind of explained it as energy um, entwinings, that you're kind of wrapped up in an energy, kind of cord with that other person. Even though it was an experience 12 years ago, you can still remember it. You can remember the hurt. You can remember the whatever. And so that's where you kind of get in, even though it's a shamanic approach to dealing with those emotional and energy issues. I think there's a lot of different approaches, and lucid dreaming is one of those approaches that allows us to see that energy is still alive, and if you want to be free of it, you have to let it go. Um, before we let go of this, I do want to say one time. So I mentioned in my books how oftentimes I'd become lucidly aware and interact with the awareness behind the dream and get responses and hear stories. But I remember one day I was walking along in waking reality, and I was thinking about the books of Jane Roberts and how you create your own reality and all this kind of stuff. And then as I was walking along, I could kind of in my mind hear myself blaming someone for some event that had happened or whatever. And then just in that moment, I heard my inner awareness say, if you create your own reality, who is there to blame? And when I heard that, if you create your own reality, who is there to blame? All of a sudden I thought, oh my God, you know, uh, whatever that situation was, I got into it for my own reasons, assuming I create my own reality. And so, therefore, if I got into it for my own reason, the other person was just helpful protagonist or antagonist in the situation, and there's no reason to blame them. It was my own stuff, and so I had to take the responsibility for that, and realize it was a belief situation, energetic, emotional situation that I created for my own purposes. So,
Very powerful. Thank you.
yeah, thanks. For those of you out there who haven't read the Castaneda books, they're not everyone's cup of tea, and you can tell Bell and I are from a certain era where those books were really popular back in the 70s and 80s and all. And sometimes for some of us too, they were some of the first material on lucid dreaming that we read that seemed to suggest there was more potential to it. And so the interesting thing about it, and the one book that I really love the most, is called Journey to Ixtlan by Carlos Castaneda. Because in that book, there's all these different practices on changing the nature of your perception. And by changing the nature of how you perceive things, then it actually changes what's out there in a sense. So like one of them is called not doing. And so in this practice, doing is focusing as you always do. Oh, you might focus, you might begin to notice that neurologically you've trained yourself to focus on the brightest area, like the green leaves, but you don't focus on the shadow areas between them because they're not big and bright and assertive. And when you start to get into not doing, you start to notice what you normally don't focus on. And it's kind of like a kind of waking shadow work that you begin to focus on things that you're ignoring. And that's what Carl Jung and others, when they brought up the idea of the shadow, it was the denied, ignored, repressed parts of the self. And sometimes the shadow appears in dreams as a thing that's behind you and chasing you. And the great thing about lucid dreaming, you can turn and relate to that shadow object. You can ask it, who are you? Or what do you represent? And find out exactly what's chasing you or exactly what's after you. But by doing that practice of not doing, that for me was big when I was in college. Also, he had another practice, which was basically um, not telling people about yourself. Basically, it was kind of a way of retaining kind of parts of you, not just throwing all your energy out there for anyone to uh, agree with, disagree with, or whatever. And I can remember back in college, people asking me, "Well, gosh, you've asked me so many questions about myself. What about you?" And I would just do my best to ask them another question about themselves, and they were so excited that someone was interested in them. But part of these practices, according to Don Juan, were ways of creating energy, were ways of creating personal energy that you could then use for your own pursuits. And sometimes I wonder if part of that was part of my success with lucid dreaming was kind of these other teachers that I had, this kind of castanedated approach and kind of taking some of this seriously, and also reading the books of Jane Roberts. They really helped me kind of think about the nature of reality in a different way. Yep. Bill, thanks so much. I'm gonna see if there's questions in the chat. Okay. So I'm going to go to David's question first, and then I'll get to Paul. David writes in the chat, I have a bit of an odd question. If it's possible to heal oneself or another in a lucid dream, then could it be possible to alter the physical world in other ways too? And David, that's a great question. It's interesting that back in so the scientific evidence for lucid dreaming came out in 1980 or 1981. And then I think it was in 1987, there was a magazine called Omni, and I was a subscriber. And I remember opening up that magazine, and here was an article by Stephen LaBerge and Jane Gockenbach. Both of them were professors, both of them were researchers into lucid dreaming. And what they had put in that Omni magazine was a survey to ask readers, have you ever had a lucid dream? And have you ever used that lucid dream for physical healing? And then about 3 months later, they had tabulated all the results, and then they reported back in Omni magazine the results. And what they discovered was, I think they had like 740 letters, and of that, 9% they considered actual examples of lucid dream healing. So, so it's an interesting thing to see. But in my books, in both of my books, I have entire chapters on how to use lucid dreaming for physical healing. And in this magazine that I co-edit, Lucid Dreaming Experience, we have some issues that are especially devoted to physical healing in lucid dreams. And in some of those accounts, you can read accounts of people who apparently healed themselves within the lucid dream state, or there are some rare accounts of people who have apparently healed others in a lucid dream. And I remember there is one account by a woman who, in waking reality, is a social worker in in Oregon, and her father developed leukemia and was going to have to start chemotherapy. And so she asked a friend of mine, Ed Kellogg, did he really think it was possible that someone could heal another person in a lucid dream? And Ed Kellogg said, yeah, you should read about it in Ed Kellogg's work and in my book. And also, you should get the permission of the person you plan to work with, just so you don't have any objections and that you're not doing something on them that they don't care for. So she called up her dad and said, hey, would you mind if I tried this? And he said, sure. Anyway, she became lucidly aware in a shopping mall. She called her dad on her cell phone, told him to come to the shopping mall because she wanted to heal him. She walks outside of the shopping mall and her dad pulls up. Her dad gets out of the car in the lucid dream. And now I think what she did, she put her hands on him and asked for divine healing to heal him. And she didn't specify heal his leukemia. It was just to heal him. And she said the strangest thing started to happen, that the dream image of her father in the lucid dream began to glow, with light coming out of his face, I think is what she said. And so she thought, oh my gosh, this is really powerful. This is really happening. And she woke up and she called up her dad, asked her dad if he had experienced anything. He hadn't experienced anything in the dream state that he recalled, but he rarely recalled his dreams. Anyway, the next time they did the blood work, the gentleman showed no evidence of leukemia. And so the doctors were so troubled by this that they made him come and do another CAT scan or whatever scan they do. And now, not only did he not have leukemia, but this mass that was on his liver that had shown up in previous scans was no longer there either. And so remember, the woman had asked for him just to be healed. She didn't say healed of leukemia or whatever. So it was really interesting to see this particular experience. And of course, when they told the doctor uh, how they felt like the healing happened, the doctor was totally didn't want to hear any more about it because it was just too woo woo. But again, Stephen LaBerge and Jane Gockenbach, some of the early researchers brought this up in 1987. It's basically been ignored, swept under the rug until I started to bring it up again in 2008 when my first book came out. And someday I think people will look at this issue in psychology called the mind body issue and will begin to use lucid dreaming as an exploratory tool to see how the mind affects the body. Because obviously it does. You see it in deep hypnosis research and other factors, but it's just one of those areas that we haven't gotten to yet. So yeah, would it be possible to alter the physical world in other ways too? Yep, David, you can alter the physical world in other ways. And again, if you haven't read my book, my book, I think it's in its 16th, 17th printing, my first book, Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self, and that'll show you all those things. So now we're going to switch it over to Paul, who has his hand up. Paul. Yeah,
Hi,
and
Rob.
if
How you
you're in the
doing?
back, hi, Paul. Good to see you.
So, I wanted to ask, and I'll relate a short dream that I put on the post in the Seth group in a second as an example. But my question is, when I first started taking courses with you years and years ago, of course, since then, I've had healing experiences in dreams. I've had tremendous spiritual experiences in dreams, which are there's sort of the most exciting to me. But in a way, I feel like I've been there, done that, and I'm not as into lucid dreaming as I was before. And having said that, I think that my dreaming world has evolved to the point where I feel like I'm lucid, but not having to go through, rubbing my hands together or
Right.
pulling my fingers, etc., to prove that I'm lucid. The example is kind of sort of interesting. David Silviak was giving a talk before Christmas, and he talked about I think it was session 800 in the Seth material, not sure, where apparently Seth talked about having or giving people in the group a dream from the Gates of Horn as a Christmas gift.
Yep.
And he said, but you have to give me something in return. So then David went through the class and he said, what would you give Seth? And I said, well, I do remember a session, and I think it was maybe the in Seth Speaks, where Seth mentioned that he would like to come back to Earth and have his favorite brandy, sit in his favorite chair,
Right.
have his right, have his favorite cigar. And I said to David, I think that's what I would give him as my gift. So that night when I went to bed, I was sort of playing with that idea of having a true dream from the gates of Horn, and giving Seth his cigar and his chair and his brandy, and he showed up. And so I gave him those and gave him some time to enjoy those things. And then the funniest thing happened, and I sat before him in a lotus position, and I have this picture in my mind that I might have been like a Christmas elf. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know if I was or not, but anyway, coming back to where I started in the beginning, I feel as if I were lucid in that experience, and that I was talking to Seth. So that's really my question. And then I'll finish it up by saying, after there was a pause, and I said to Seth, what is it that you do on the other side of the veil?
Yeah.
What do you spend your time doing? And there was a pause, and he said, I teach angels. And I thought that was very cool. And I think my last sentence, I posted this on the site. I think my last sentence was that was his gift to me, because my interest in the other side of the veil, obviously there have been so many books written about, Revelations, Swedenborg, the mystic, goes on and on and on. So I guess you can give me the short answer as to what you think about lucid dreaming occurring as sort of a natural thing.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Paul. I think what I've noticed in my own life is what you're commenting on, and that is that I've played around so much with lucid dreaming and my own work, that now in a lot of dreams I don't become technically lucid where I stop and go, wait a sec, this is a lucid dream. But instead what happens is I act as if I understood that already.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have that moment where I shout it out or whatever. But it's kind of like it's kind of become more baked into the cake of my worldview, and now I accept that, oh yeah, this is a creation, and so this kind of higher order of awareness just kind of exists a little bit more naturally, without that kind of shout out, hey, this is a dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh well, thanks for sharing. That's great.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, next we're going to go to Paul. Yeah, we'll have you unmute. Yep. Hi.
Hey Robert, here again.
Hi.
I've got a question about the blockages regarding lucid dreaming. Like for the last month, I think I've been performing the technique with looking on the hands and saying myself tonight, like I see my hand tonight, I'm gonna realize I'm dreaming. Maybe for the I lost maybe a few days because of travel or work, but usually I'm starting doing this technique during shower, and carry on until I'm in bed, and during the bed, yeah, I'm performing it. For the last month, I had more vivid dreams. That's for sure. Almost every night, even if I'm sleeping very short, still I have some vivid dreams. and maybe additionally, a very interesting, let's say, story. Six years ago, I've tried this technique first time with looking on hands, saying that this quote for 3 nights in a row. I didn't feel anything, to be honest. But on the fourth day, my wife came to me and said, "Dear, you know, for the last 3 nights, I'm having very vivid and crazy dreams. I don't know what's happening." So for me, that was a bit funny, but as well frustrated, because I realized my practice is affecting my wife, that she sleeps next to me, but I have no result from that. So I guess that time I realized I've got some blockages, and would like to ask you about that.
Yeah, in our magazine, Lucid Dreaming Experience, I think it was like 3 or 4 issues ago, a psychotherapist from San Francisco wrote an article. Her name is Virginia Bennett, Bennett. And the article is called Psychological Resistance to Lucid Dreaming. And she herself is a lucid dreamer. But she'll ask her clients a question and ask them to respond to this. I would like to lucid dream, but. And how do you respond? It's too hard. It takes too long. I'm too tired. It scares me. The zombies might show up, or whatever it is. I would like to lucid dream, but. And so sometimes when you're kind of in a meditative state and have some free time, you might just want to just start to automatically write whatever comes to you, and begin to see if it brings up some childhood memory of something, or brings up some interesting whatever, because the blockage can vary in various ways. Some people think, oh, you have to practice and it's a real hard thing and all. Other people, no, they're worried about the witches because they grew up in a country where witches were really a real thing, and they're just frightened. And so play around with that sometime. And I'd like to lucid dream, but. And then the other thing, sometimes I call it just complete surrender. Just before you go to sleep, tell your inner self, go, hey, inner self, I assume you're out there, or unconscious mind, or whatever you want to call yourself. I would like to do this lucid dreaming stuff, but I just don't know how. So I'm going to totally surrender. And if there's any way that you can help me become lucid, please do. However you want to surrender, I don't want to get too mushy about it. But sometimes I've found that people who surrender suddenly get the results. And sometimes it's because their approach is so ego bound that they're kind of being taught a lesson that you can't approach it in this kind of ego bound way. You have to kind of relate to the inner self and approach it in a more thoughtful way. But thank you for working so hard on this, Paul. Yeah, I appreciate your hard work.
Yeah, next time I hope I'm going to bring some results. Much appreciated.
Also, if you have this deep of a connection with your wife's unconscious mind, tonight in my dreams, let me encourage my wife to come into my dreams and help me become lucidly aware, because it sounds like your wife is really tuned in.
Yeah, she is, but unfortunately, she's not into lucid dreaming. Unfortunately, not.
Yeah. Well, anyway, her unconscious self might be. We'll see.
Much appreciated, Robert.
Oh, thanks, Paul. It's funny. One time I was at a workshop in Los Angeles, and I was teaching people different techniques to become lucidly aware, and mentioned my hands technique of looking at your hands while telling yourself, tonight in my dreams, I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. Tonight in my dreams, I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. And so this one woman reported that she was doing that before sleep, and her husband came to bed and asked her, what are you doing? And she said, oh, I'm doing this technique. I'm looking at my hands. Tonight in my dreams, I'll see my hands and realize I'm dreaming. Anyway, that night in his dream, boom, his hands popped in front of his face, and he became lucidly aware. And she was so blown away because, she'd been trying for 10 days or whatever and hadn't had that happen yet. And of course, the first time, he pulled it off. And so it's interesting how it goes, but keep playing with it, see what comes, and I think your intent will get you to the other side. So now we're going to go to Love Sunny Days. So you'll have to unmute yourself. Okay, go for it.
Hello?
Hi there.
Oh, yeah. I had a question, I guess, more towards the lucidity in the dream. So, last year I had way more lucid dreams. I was like reading the book by Stephen LaBerge. I got your two books too, and I'm like halfway through the first one. And like I would just become lucid in my dreams. Like there was no, like I tried looking at my hands, tried reality checks throughout the day, and none of this ever really worked. It only seemed to be like when I lay down and let's say like I go to sleep and then wake up and go pee, and then I like go back to sleep. I like tell myself, all right, or like ask my like inner consciousness, like, uh, help me lucid dream, like I want to become aware. So when I would do things like that, so I guess the power of suggestion, I would just the most random stuff. Like I would be throwing trash away and I become lucid, or I look at the water in the stream and I become lucid. Or even last night, even I was like in the classroom and I just stood up from my desk and I became lucid. And I was just wondering, is there any way that you like spontaneously become lucid, or is there a way to become lucid in the dream, or does it's just like a light switch that it just happens?
Yeah. No. Well, first, congratulations. And what one thing I want to point out to everyone who's listening that you're doing that I think is important and also leading to more lucid dreams for you. So if you listen to what Love Sunny Days said, he said, I might get up and go use the restroom and come back to bed and then remind myself, hey, yeah, in my next dream, I want to realize I'm dreaming and become lucid or whatever. And then just some random thing, the reflection of the water in the stream, or putting out the trash and noticing something weird, and you become lucid. But the reason I'm pointing that out is sometimes when we spontaneously wake, at 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever, we've already been through a number of dream cycles, and we might actually be more in a dreamy state than we realize. And as we come back to bed and give ourselves any kind of suggestion, then that intent makes it into the dream state, and we become lucidly aware. So what I'm encouraging people to do is, when you wake up spontaneously at 4 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning, and you're going back to sleep, just remind yourself, oh yeah, I want to have a lucid dream, or I want to become aware I'm dreaming.
Okay.
So again, for you, and to your question, a lot of people, they notice something unusual, and that helps them become lucidly aware. Like I remember one time I got into an elevator, and the reflection off of the aluminum siding in the elevator seemed off. It seemed weird. And then I just realized, oh, this is a dream. This is weird. Or I'd be walking down a sidewalk and there's a mud puddle, and I would step over the mud puddle, but then I'd glide, for 5 feet. And then I thought, well, that was weird. Why did I glide for 5 feet? Oh, this is a dream. And so a lot of becoming lucidly aware is just noticing that thing, being more mindfully aware of that thing that tells you something's not right here. Something's not right. And that's whenever I have that experience of something strange here, that's when I become, oh, this is a dream. That's why it's strange.
Okay. And then I was also going to ask, even though lucid dreams are important and very profound, it's important too to like write down my regular dreams too, because even though I won't like remember a lot of my regular dreams, I still do wake up and still have like bits of it that I remember. So
Yeah.
sometimes I don't think that's important. Do you think I should still write those things down?
I hope people who get involved in lucid dreaming ultimately just fall in love with dreaming itself, because our regular dreams, some of my most profound dream experiences have been regular dreams. Have been dreams when I haven't been lucid, and they're ones that have taught me things. Whether it's precognitive dream, or whether it's dream where I finally figured out what a symbol represented or whatever. Um, so the other way that it helps, though, helps you become lucid is oftentimes in my life, I'd be going along and something would happen, and I'd go, wait a second, that happened to me last week in a dream. And then I'd look around and go, oh crap, this is a dream. And I'd become lucidly aware. And so that's kind of the value of writing down your non-lucid dreams is that sometimes elements of them will appear later on and help you become lucid. But
Right.
but sometimes if you pay attention to them, you'll start to realize, oh my gosh, I dreamt that I saw my old friend and he had a broken leg. And then 3 weeks later, you meet your old friend and he's limping along, and you go, "What happened to you?" And he goes, "Oh, I almost broke my leg." And that's when you go, reality is different than what people are telling me, because how did I dream about this, 3 weeks ago, and now he's telling me how he
It's
almost broke
happening.
his leg. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's what got me into trying to not figure it out, but understand it more, I guess, because I'd had like precognitive dreams throughout my life. And I would just, brush them off as just like, oh, maybe I predicted this because like that's what our brains do in certain situations. But as I've been getting older, I'm like, there's something here that's probably trying to like communicate with me. So maybe I should try and like listen or find better ways to communicate with it back. So I
yeah.
appreciate you. Your
Yeah,
answer. Thank you.
yeah, but I appreciate it. Yeah, that and just to mention that, I think the way I got into dreaming was as a little kid, I would have precognitive dreams. Like sometimes in the dream state, I'd hear a very funny phrase, and then 5 hours later, I'd be at my elementary school running around with my friends, and someone would say that exact phrase
That's
that was
saving.
really bizarre. And I mean, even as a little kid, I started noticing, how do you have precognitive dreams? I mean, how do you get this information out of linear time? And also it was the thing that got me really interested in dreaming, and what my dreaming self was kind of showing me about the nature of reality. So keep on going and love sunny days. You're doing good.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Michael, you got your hand up next. Thanks. Okay, I'm not sure we can hear you for some odd reason. I'm not hearing you. Keep going. Huh. You know what? For some reason, you're not coming through. Keep playing around with that, and keep talking. And eventually, when we hear you, I'll get to you here. Uh, so one thing that Michael asked is, does Stephen LaBerge do these kind of sessions or do workshop sessions? Not that I'm aware of anymore. He used to do workshops in Hawaii, but I haven't seen him advertise that in a long time, so I don't think he does. There's people like Andrew Holacek who do workshops. He of course is focused on Buddhist dream yoga, and also that's all. Um, I don't know if Stephen LaBerge is secretive. I don't think he's secretive. What I think he is, he's very popular, and he's kind of like the Beatles were in the '60s. If Stephen LaBerge shows up, then he has 80 people chasing after him, screaming for him to answer questions and stuff like that. I don't really think that's secretive. He's just, he's been there, done that, and so I think he's passing it on to the next generation. That kind of thing. Someone named David asked, he heard that playing computer games can trigger lucid dreaming. Do I know if that's true? So what happened, David, is that back when video gaming became big, and I guess it's still big, but back when it became super big, in the '90s and all, what people would find out is, they'd be sitting there playing their video game for 2 hours, and then they'd fall asleep. And suddenly in their sleep, they'd be still playing a video game, but now something totally bizarre would happen that had never happened before. And they'd go, wait a second, how could that bizarre thing happen? Oh, this is a dream. And so they'd become lucidly aware. So did the computer gaming cause the lucid dream? Nope, I don't think so. I think what happened was they were just deeply focused on the computer game, just like the woman in this article that I interviewed was deeply focused on all the troubles in Colombia back in the 80s and 90s. And so then what did she dream about? Killings and murders and assaults. And so you're playing a computer game and then you go to sleep. What do you dream about? The computer game. And oh, now something weird's happening. Oh, this must be a dream. So it's just the context in which their mind was engaged. And so the playing computer games didn't really trigger lucid dreaming. But what helps trigger lucid dreaming is one's focus. Using your intent and your focus can help you become lucidly aware. So I hope that's helpful. And there's been a lot of studies on this, talking about that. The woman I mentioned earlier, Jane Gackenbach, did a lot of studies on lucid dreaming in video gaming populations. She had a son who was a big video gamer and also had lucid dreams as well. So you can check into that. Let me see what else. Other questions out there? If you'd like to raise your hand, this would be a good chance to ask a question, or if you want to just share a interesting lucid dream experience, we always love that too. So, just to mention some of the other articles in this magazine. Here you can see the table of contents. In one article was called "Embracing the Golden Shadow: How Leah Larwood Used Her Lucid Dreams to Overcome a Phobia About Public Speaking." And so that's something that people don't realize, that a lot of lucid dreamers are using lucid dreams to resolve anxiety, to resolve phobias, to resolve obsessive compulsive disorders, the various things. But science really hasn't caught up with that. Science understands that lucid dreaming can be used to resolve recurring nightmares from post-traumatic stress disorder, but they haven't seen all the other ways that lucid dreamers are using it. And that's one thing I've always tried to popularize. Another one is a really fascinating one. There's a gentleman, David L. Kahn, and he wrote an article, "Sacred Geometry in Lucid Dreams." And that was something that this woman I interviewed mentioned as well, that in her lucid dreams, as she went deeper and deeper, she started to have these geometric figures appear, or geometric things happen. And so this David O'Con is writing an article about his, what he calls sacred geometry experiences in lucid dreams. And that was one thing that I also noticed in my own lucid dreaming journey, that on occasion, geometric figures would appear, and oftentimes they were what one might call a sacred geometric thing. Like one time I was lucidly aware, and I was just admiring the stars in the night sky in this lucid dream. I was standing on a beach and I was looking up, admiring the stars in the night sky. And then all of a sudden, the stars started to come together and make these forms, like interlocking circles. And then they made basically what people call the Star of David, or two intertwined pyramidal shapes and things like that. It was really wild because I hadn't intended it, hadn't expected it, didn't really care about any of that. But all of a sudden, sacred geometric figures started to form. Then there's another one, article on a gentleman, Andras Jokin, how lucid dreaming helped him resolve his fear of death. And so, it's interesting to see how people use lucid dreaming as they go deeper. When you start out, most of us just use it for fun. We fly around, we make dream figures do things, we, kind of exert our will upon the dreamscape. But as we go deeper, And sometimes as we welcome the unconscious mind or our inner self to engage with us, then some really profound things begin to happen. And so I hope everyone who does lucid dream will open up to that. So David has his hand up. And so David, we're going to give you the phone. Yeah.
Hi there, Robert. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
great.
Perfect.
Okay. Sorry for the third question. I know I've asked two already, but I'm just wondering where you're at with now after 40 plus years of lucid dreaming. You've achieved probably quite a lot in lucid dreaming, probably tried everything. Uh, does it ever get boring? And do you ever, sort of think, oh, I'll do something else? Yeah.
It never gets boring. I do want to say that um, every time I thought I'd got to the pinnacle of lucid dreaming, within a year or two, I saw that there's something where deeper and more incredible to get to, and so that would start me further on the journey. A lot of lucid dreaming journey is letting go of fear, is resolving fears that are pointed out to you. Oftentimes I began to do, by year 10 of lucid dreaming, when I'd become lucid, if there was ever any interesting activity going on when I became lucidly aware, I began to believe that my inner awareness was showing me something. And so I should go over there and investigate, what's going on. And sometimes by doing that, I would learn about limiting beliefs that I had that were keeping me from growing, fears that I had yet to resolve and needed to resolve before I could move along. And sometimes they were simple things, but sometimes they were really kind of deep life questions. And so part of the journey into lucid dreaming is first understanding the mechanics of lucid dreaming, and then you kind of get to a point where you begin to understand the mechanics of perceived reality creation. In this case, am I projecting my fears out there and now I'm relating to them in a lucid dream? What's going on here? And then once you kind of break through your own fears and your own stuff and resolve some of that, I think that's when you begin to have more profound experiences with this inner awareness and its vast knowledge. And so that's why the journey is simply incredible, but it does take a deep dedication and a lot of years. And probably the most difficult part is people working through their own fears. Because like this woman was talking about having these dreams of tsunamis, these nightmares of tsunamis, it took her many years to work through that and get to the other side. Because what if I had a tsunami dream, to me it would mean some sort of being overwhelmed by emotions. There's something emotionally going on in my life because for me, water and emotions are kind of a dream symbol. So like if I'm being emotionally hard, then the water turns to ice. And that's when I'm being a hard, cold Saturn sucker. I'm just showing people how hard I can be. But if the water's boiling or if the water's up to my neck, well, then it shows me I'm angry or I'm in an emotional situation up to my neck. But if I had a tsunami, it would mean that I'm being emotionally overwhelmed by whatever's going on in my life at that time. So I'm really proud of her that she worked through this. But again, that's the process. People think you jump into the water, the pond of lucid dreaming, and you immediately know how to swim, and you immediately know where the treasure is. You don't. It's a long process.
So just quickly on top of that, do you think is your spiritual mission in this life to be teach lucid dream or to be like a leader in spiritual sense?
Yeah, you know what? Well, here's the odd thing, David. Um, so in 2007-8, I began to write my first book, Lucid Dreaming: Gateway to the Inner Self. And while I was writing the book, I'd get to various chapters and I think, oh, I ought to include this lucid dream or that lucid dream. I might have 5 or 6 lucid dreams to pick from. But my inner awareness would encourage me to select certain ones. So some of them that had to do with this Asian guy who would reappear in my dreams and lucid dreams, for the previous 15 years or whatever. And so I'd type that in there. Anyway, the book gets sent off to the printer. It's being proofread and published. And suddenly I begin to have these recurring dreams that have all this Buddhist symbolism in it. And I'd never studied Buddhism because of the translation issues and all. And finally, this series of dreams ended when this Buddhist master, he was Chinese, reached into his robe and put this ancient turquoise necklace around my neck, and the room exploded into this purple light. And I woke up from that experience and I thought, what the H is happening here? I've had weeks of Buddhist symbolism and all this kind of stuff. And I wrote a friend of mine who's a Vedic astrologer in San Francisco, and I said, I'm having these weird dreams, and I think this has something to do with my life purpose. And he writes me back and he says, Chinese Buddhist. I'm hosting a Chinese Buddhist. Here's the link. And I click on the link, and it was the guy who put the ancient turquoise necklace. And then I realized I'd mentioned, so I started to read about this guy. He's the lineage head of Chinese esoteric Buddhism. And I began to read about this guy, and I realized this was the guy that I had been dreaming about the previous 15 years. But he always had a weird haircut, and I could never tell, was he Indonesian? Was he Chinese? Was he Japanese? What was he? Finally, he shaved his head. And so in that dream, when he gave me the ancient turquoise necklace, he had a shaved head. It was obvious he was Chinese. And so I went to meet the guy and really just had my mind blown. It was utterly extraordinary. So again, the other thing about lucid dreaming, and someday I intend to write a book that shows the deeper aspects of lucid dreaming. If you really want to take it even deeper, you can even begin to find out about past life selves. And that's how truly profound it can be. But first, I'd say you got to get pretty firmly situated in this realm before you begin to explore some of this deeper stuff. So yeah, definitely teaching is part of my mission. Yeah. Thanks for the questions. Yeah, and Paul, before we go to Love Sunny Days, Paul brings up that about hypnosis sessions. Could you ask in a hypnosis session, I would like to lucid dream, or you can. There have been some interesting studies where people have used hypnosis or self-hypnosis to have more lucid dreams. And so you could, in a hypnotic state, tell yourself that now in this state, I resolve all my blockages and concerns about lucid dreaming. And I allow myself to begin to have lucid dreams. And by having that kind of resolution on an inner level, suddenly that might open up the gates and allow lucid dreaming to occur. But anyway, yeah, that's a good one. I really do like self-hypnosis. When I was a young guy, I went to a hypnotist in Wichita, Kansas, and he taught me self-hypnosis. And I began to use his self-hypnosis almost daily for various things. And the one thing I'll say about self-hypnosis, if you go down the same path over and over and over, for years, you'll find you'll get into very deep states of awareness. It's kind of like meditating month after month, year after year. You can get into some very deep states. And for me, that's how self-hypnosis was. It was kind of my particular form of meditation. So anyway, I want to thank everyone for paying attention to this. I think what the idea is that the next first Thursday is when we'll do this again. So that'll be February 6th of 2025. And in the meantime, I wish you all the best with lucid dreaming. If you ever want to help out our free online magazine, again, you can get this for free. It helps lucid dreamers all around the world. Just go to luciddreamingmagazine.com. There you can submit a lucid dream. You can submit an article. You can send me a note about who I ought to interview for the Lucid Dreaming magazine. As long as they're really an experienced lucid dreamer, always happy for insights there. But I use lucid dreaming. I use this magazine to help me get excited about lucid dreaming. Because when I read the stories that other people have done, that energizes my interest, my intent in becoming lucidly aware. And so I hope you'll also think about just reading the stories, the articles, the lucid dreams at the end of the magazine, just just to kind of get your head in that space. Because oftentimes, especially when I first started out with this magazine, I'd read some article or lucid dream, and I'd think, no, you cannot do that in a lucid dream. Can you? And then within the week, I'd have a lucid dream where I was in that exact situation and able to do what that lucid dreamer had done. And I thought, oh my God, you really can. So anyway, it's amazing what lucid dreaming does, but you got to keep your head in the game. You got to keep your head in the game. So anyway, I want to thank everyone for being here today, and I'll see you the first Thursday of February. So take care. Cheerio. Bye.